So this is the second Zoom Ramble, my recollections from my work life. And I want to talk about Ireland. Ireland, gosh, as a carpenter, I'd always taken a very naughty pleasure in telling Irish jokes. That's what English carpenters do. The Irishman's always a thicky, poor guy. There's all these fantastic jokes about the Irishman. I once went on holiday in Spain, and there was a facilitator who is an Irishman who worked in the peace office in Northern Ireland. And he was a lovely, lovely man, John Mulligan. And he said to me, I work in the peace office, but there's no peace in that peace office. They're always having these fierce arguments in there. And I wanted to cheer John up. So I told him my battery of Irish jokes, and unfortunately they didn't have the desired effect at all. In fact, he got angrier and angrier, and he ended up telling me Paddy did not make his own sandwiches, which made my story even funnier. But I'm not doing this Zoom call to tell you about my great Irish jokes, which I realized in telling them to John Mulligan. No, they're not so great. And John Mulligan had a point, and you shouldn't be taking the piss out of the Irish. It's not fair. And every European country has a trope where they take the piss out of some neighbor that's supposed to be more stupid than them. But there we are. I always wondered from a karmic point of view whether the pleasure that I took in my Irish jokes would be karmically repaid to me one day. And that's really what this story is all about, except that I got the last laugh, which you would do in an Irish story. We're going back to the time when I worked in North Wales. I worked in this beautiful place called In Ireland, which was a big stone house and barn situated in the middle of a sheep farm in the high valleys in North Wales. In Ireland, the house of Dinmail. But it could also mean, and Welsh words can have many meanings, could also mean fort of a prince. And that's how we like to think of this place. It was really out there on its own, Dinmail. And it had a barn, maybe a couple of centuries old, a barn that I'd helped re-roof and made solid, and it was re-slated, and we put in great sheets of glass for skylights, and the walls were rebuilt. And I had this fantastic barn to work in, had a door at the end, led out to the garden. So I had an outdoor space and an indoor space to work in, which is just how I like it, and just what you need if you're going to work in Wales and you like working outside. You need a nice indoors and a nice outdoors. Get the best of both worlds. I had the best of every world there at Dinmail. And I was working away. At that time, Britain was doing really well. Schools were doing really well. They were really well funded. I probably had about 18 months worth of work in hand on the books. And when you've got work in advance for months, you can get really well organized. So you can have your timber you need. You can have your timber you need stacked up and drying, because I work in green oak, and you don't really want to work it green. You want it to sit for a while and lose its water content, move a bit where it's going to go, get a bit lighter. I was a very well organized person, very bright, very good at what I did. And I had organized in a magazine called Landscape Design. The advertising people had called me up, said, you ought to advertise with us. So I gave them a go. And I got inquiries from all over the UK and all over the world. So suddenly the world is opening up to me. So I got inquiries from a very nice couple, probably who trained in England, but they worked as landscape designers and architect in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. and they were helping the Children's Hospital in Belfast. The Children's Hospital, as well as many places at that time, they got a lump of money to improve the outside, to improve the pathways, to improve all the interesting things you might find on that pathway, to make interesting trails. And one day, so I sent them, they inquired, I sent them my info. I didn't really expect that I would get any work from them. But lo and behold, I was working on a project for somebody. Like, I had a schedule. I had an 18-month schedule. And in some ways, I'm a very stubborn person. And what I'm doing is what I'm doing. And I don't like to be buggered about. And I don't change things just instantly because somebody's trying to sweet talk me into something. I get the contractor calls up. Yeah. The landscape designers had designed this whole thing, an enormous thing, for the parkland that was outside the Children's Hospital in Belfast. And my work was included in it, some of my work, say about £6,000 worth of work, which is not a lot of money in contractors' terms. It was a lot of money to me. And installing, getting to Belfast from North Wales. So the contractor calls me up. He sounds quite nice for a contractor, but these contractors, they're all the same. They're all busy, busy, busy. Everything's got to happen now. It's all now, now, now. It's all like they drunk too much coffee before they even got up. And I'm in my little dreamy place in North Wales. I control my environment. I'm doing what I'm doing. But I really like the idea of taking my work for the Children's Hospital in Belfast. I mean, what could beat that? I did work for children's hospitals in Liverpool, other places, and nothing can top that, really. The fact that somebody would include your work in their design, and then insist that you have to get me to do it, not just anybody. You can go to companies, you can go to other places and get outdoor musical play, but they wanted my work. And that's what I want to do. I want to work with people who want my work. And I didn't know it, but behind the scenes, this was all being organized. It was all being a little tiny part of a great big project. So the contractor calls me up and he says, but we need this work in place in a number of weeks, which is like really quick. I'm like a slow little tortoise person. I do things carefully, one at a time, get everything sorted, get all my ducks in a row. So I can't live like this. It's got to be ready in a few weeks. But of course, I can't resist. I can take my work to Ireland at last for people who want it. So I say yes. So I have to drop what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing. I have to suddenly switch and make stuff for the Irish lot, Northern Ireland. And I do that because of this very basic motivation. And I'm flattered to be asked, and I want to do this work. I do the work. I get it all ready. I get another call from the contractor after it's ready. Oh, we're not ready for you. Now, before we got to that, I got a deposit from the contractor. And as it happens, the way these people work, they never give anybody a deposit. Lots of people don't. And I always had a deposit of a third, just in case the project went tits up. And what are you left with? You're left with your timber and your work and whatever. Actually, that never happened to me. I never had a project that ended up tits up. There might have been problems, there might have been arguments, but the work always got there in the end. But I got my deposit. And I got my deposit because the landscape designers insisted that Mr. Barron gets his deposit. So rules were broken for Mr. Barron, myself, and I got my deposit. Of course I did. I wasn't going to make it without a deposit, really. Anyway, I had the deposit. I do the work. I put my project to one side to do the work, and the contractor tells me, no, we're not ready for you. We'll let you know when we're ready. Boy, do I feel buggered about. I've done no work special for them because they said they wanted it. Then they say they're not ready for it. Put it to one side. I'm thinking, well, I told all those Irish jokes for such a long time. I had such a good laugh at their expense. So this is what happens. This is your karma. This is what happens. You get buggered around by these contractors, and it's a terrible thing. Never mind. I'm glad to be asked. I've done the work. It's ready when they're ready. Fine. I just get back to my schedule, get on with things, not try and be wound up in any way. Eventually, the contractor tells me when he's ready. I make arrangements. I make arrangements to hire a big van and get the ferry from Liverpool to Belfast. Now, I still feel like I've never been to Ireland, which is ridiculous because I have been to Ireland. I took the work to Belfast. I hired a big van, put everything in the van. I got on the ferry in Liverpool. Well, I grew up in Liverpool. I've been in that port forever. I love that river. I mean, it was a dirty, grimy, grotty, smelly, polluted, poisoned place, but I loved it just the same. It was my home. Not like that now. It's all cleaned up now. And it just looked weird to me. I know it's supposed to look nice to everybody. It doesn't feel the same at all. Yeah, I got on the ferry, and it was like walking into the 1970s. It's exactly what it was like. It was full of working class people. It was full of a canteen from the 1970s and then a bar from the 1970s and the behavior from the 1970s and all the attitudes. It was weird. It was like a David Lynch film. Just the whole thing was just bizarre. Anyway, I wasn't interested in any of that. I was interested in sailing out of Liverpool, but it was pea soup fog. And not only that, it was freezing. And the ferry that I was on was all steel. It was all made out of steel. So the moment you stepped outside, you're walking on ice. It was really, really strange. Anyway, for my own medicinal reasons, I needed to step outside and smoke my medicine and enjoy the moment, the ambience of leaving Liverpool. And lo and behold, at some point the ferry did move its slow-moving arse and did move its way out of Liverpool. And this was the first time that I'd been on a boat looking back at Liverpool. Even if it was pea soup fog, it was very atmospheric. And to me, it felt utterly historic and special. And okay, it was on my own, and I was the only one who was going to feel that. But it was gorgeous. I went back to my cabin, and I think I slept till we woke up in Belfast. Gosh, waking up in Belfast. I'd only ever seen Belfast on the news. And I think they were talking about the peace agreement then. But it was a dodgy sectarian kind of place. And when I try and get through the customs from the ferry, I've got a policeman or a security guy saying, how do you open up all the insides of the van? How the hell do I know how you open up the insides of the van? It's a rented van. I don't know anything about that van. That's what I say to the security man. He can't be asked to open it up either, so he lets me through. But I mean, the whole thing could have been packed with Semtex and nobody would know. I certainly wouldn't know. Anyway, I drive myself and find my way to the contractor's office. Do the contractors know anything about me or the work or expecting me that morning? No, they do not. Now remember, we're in the middle of a funny Irish story that's never been told, a kind of revenge karmic thing on Eliot In Ireland. Do they know where the work is going? No, they do not. Can they be bothered to look at their own plans and drawings? No, they cannot. That's too difficult. I am directed to a school, an old Victorian kind of school. And I'm directed to install my work in the playground of this school, which will be surrounded with stone walls around the edge and everything. And I'm thinking, this is really odd. Nobody's going to play the work here. This is out the way. Nobody's going to come in this school and play the work. This is completely mad. Oh, well, we are in the middle of this mad Irish story that's never been told. So I suppose this is what you do. Okay, so we start digging the holes in this playground, which means going through concrete. So all this Irish navvy lot, they're trying to get through the concrete, dig these holes. The holes are almost ready. Of course they were. It's serious going through a concrete playground in a school and digging out. I like getting my work really deep. Like they're supposed to be a quarter of the length in. That's a couple of feet in. That's deeper than most guys are willing to go. But anyway, they're digging away. And then somehow somebody must have called the landscape architects and found out that's not where the work's supposed to go. It's supposed to go on the trail, isn't it? On the pathway. So we take all the work out again. I have to kind of take it all apart again to move it, and we move it down the pathway. And by the end of that day, when the light is fading, my work is installed in place. It looks gorgeous. It looks drop dead gorgeous. It's absolutely fabulous. I'm standing back looking at it, thinking how gorgeous it is. And then there's a bunch of workmen walking along the path, and I'm listening to what they have to say. They've all got their tools in their hands, like plumber's tools, like spanners and heavy duty things like that. I'm listening to what they have to say. They're saying, do you see this? Do you see they put the money into this? Can you believe it? So they're expressing how they feel about the work. They're getting their big tools out. They're playing my instruments with their big tools, which is a bloody no-no. But they're treating Eliot Barron how I guess he deserves to be treated after all those years of telling Irish jokes. Anyway, that was really devastating to me, and I have to deal with it. Their reception, how they see the work, my beautiful work that looks so drop dead gorgeous there. Just round the corner from the Falls Road, I get in the van, I go back to Wales. All is well. I try to get paid. My story continues because I'm not getting paid. So I have to do this thing of calling the money man every week to get paid. And he says to me when he picks up the phone, oh, Eliot, you don't want to hear my problems. And I say, that's right. I don't want to hear your problems. I want to get paid. So this went on and on and on and on. And I have to remind myself I'm in this special Eliot story. It's a revenge thing for telling all those silly Irish stories for so long. In the end, I get through to him, and it's the day he's going to pay me. And in the end, it's completely forgotten about because it was an impossible thing to happen that I got a deposit. So I got paid the full whack plus the deposit, which I thought was a fantastic ending to the story, but it wasn't the ending to the story because my work got damaged because there were gangs came down from the Falls Road, and the gangs would take the greatest pleasure in destroying and wrecking everything. But I decided that my deposit would be my fund for going back to Belfast and doing repair work, right? The hospital wouldn't have to pay me because I've already been paid. So the work's damaged. I call a woman in the hospital who's responsible for the care and maintenance. She would not let me come and repair the work. And I could not say, well, I've already been paid twice, because I would have to give the money back, which I was not prepared to do. I just said, I'll come and repair it. I'll do it gratis as a freebie to the hospital, which I love and adore. Let me put my work right. No, no, no. That is pretty much the end of that completely insane story, which is absolutely 100% true. My Irish story, my second Zoom ramble. this happened to me. I've been to Belfast and I don't feel I've been to Ireland at all. There we are. Just to say about the movement, about this recording on the laptop, obviously, through some kind of Doctor Who chicanery, I'm still on the ferry now. Thank you.
Great.